Good evening, everybody. Welcome once again to the Lepanto Institute's Anchor Team. I'm your host, Michael Hitchborn, and Jim Mon is absent this evening. Jim is on a trip. He's been on a trip for the last 2 weeks, in fact, and he will not be able to join us this evening. So I'm flying solo. This evening, we're going to be talking about a topic that I have spent, if I were to tally it all up, it would probably be somewhere around the course of a year investigating, researching, reading. If you were to take out all the empty space, all the time for sleep, it's probably a full year that I've researched this topic, and that topic is Catholic Relief Services. And I've been thinking for a long time that I really should write a book, and the title of the book that I wanted to write is "The Case Against Catholic Relief Services," and the idea would be that I would lay out like a courtroom case, and present the evidence the way a prosecutor would present the evidence, and then I would counter that with CRS's own public statements, their counter arguments to the evidence that I would be supplying. And then, of course, the reader would be the jury. It's a thought that I've had in the back of my head for a long time. I really do want to do it at some point. I don't know when I'll get to it, but that was the inspiration behind this evening's title. So before we get into that, I just want to say, if you want to support the Lepanto Institute and you enjoy tonight's program, you want to be a part of tonight's program, or you just want to support what we are doing, please go to lepantoin.org. I'm going to put the link here in the show notes, lepantoin.org/anchor, ANCHOR -team. So if you would like to join the Anchor Team, it's just $15 a month. By joining the Anchor Team, you are supporting the work that we do. You are helping to keep us continue the kinds of investigations that we'll be discussing this evening. And we'll be better equipped to be able to provide you with the information you need in order to help your bishops, your priests, and your fellow faithful to know and understand what's really happening in the church. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and start with our opening prayer. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right. So, I will be issuing a couple more crass commercial messages throughout the program, just so that you know, so that we can keep things going. So, I want to start by giving you a little bit of background. I want to tell you a little bit about how I came to investigate CRS to begin with. You know, it's not every day that you just wake up and you say, you know what, I want to dig up some dirt on things going on in the Catholic Church, and I want to find out exactly what these people, who everybody believes to be are good and holy and true, practicing Catholic and doing Catholic things organization, and just bash it over the head with a hammer. Nobody wakes up in the morning doing that, and I certainly didn't. What happened was, I was working for a pro-life organization, American Life League, and I had been investigating the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. And I was finding that the CCHD was giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to organizations that directly work against the church. They were promoting abortion, contraception, homosexuality, and Marxism. And as I was investigating those organizations, somebody happened to ask me, well, what about CRS? Are they any good? And, you know, I had heard, well, maybe there was something like a dust up or something that happened, but maybe they've cleaned up. And I thought, well, I'd better look at their numbers, their financials, and see, what they're doing, what they're up to. And I looked at their tax form 990s. And as I was looking at the tax form 990s, just scrolling down, the first thing that hit me was, holy smokes, their top executives are getting paid a whole lot of money. I mean, the average salary for the top paid employees was almost $200,000 a year. That's incredible. So that was the first thing that struck me. I was really put off by the fact that people are actually getting wealthy on the precept of helping the poor. It's that there's something kind of gross about that. But I wanted to stick to what CRS does. What are they doing? And I went to the back of their 990s where it listed all the organizations that they were giving funding to. And what I found is that they were giving not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but millions and tens of millions of dollars to organizations that were directly pushing contraception, promoting birth control, distributing condoms, promoting abortion. Okay. Organizations that were saying that they needed to allow access to what they called safe abortions. In fact, I found that CRS was a member of something called the White Ribbon Alliance for Safe Motherhood, which was all about promoting safe abortions. So I was researching what CRS was funding. And as I was researching this, I found that they were giving money to organizations like Save the Children, Care International, Adventist Relief Agency, Population Services International, Helen Keller International, Elizabeth Glasser Pediatric AIDS Foundation, AfriCare, Mercy Corps, Oxfam, Plan International, World Vision, and the YWCA, and dozens of others. Okay. All of those organizations that I just listed, all of them are directly involved in the promotion of condoms, contraception, and abortion. So when I found this, I showed it to my bosses and they said, well, you need to go have a conversation with the head of CRS. And at the time, the chairman of the board was Bishop Kikanis out in Tucson, Arizona. So I flew the almost 3,000 miles to Arizona to have a meeting with Bishop Kikanis and to sit down and show him all the things that I was discovering. And the meeting was odd. At first, he was very open, had his arms out like this, sitting on a chair. Welcome. What can I get for you? Can I get you some coffee? You know, what can we do? How can I help you? And I said, well, Your Excellency, I've been doing some research and I found that CRS has been giving money to these organizations and there are problems here. And I sat down with my laptop open and I showed him page after page of documented evidence. And his position went from this to this, very tight, very closed. And he kept looking at his watch and he kept looking at the door like, how can I get this guy out of my office? He didn't want me there. He didn't want to know this information. So I took that information to Bishop Kikanis and I told him that I was working on a report. I was compiling all of this information. I'd put it together in a report for him and I'd let him see it before I published anything. And so then I left. When I got back to Virginia, I started working on another report that I was trying to put together. This one was on Jeffrey Sachs. It was one of the first public reports in Catholic circles going against Jeffrey Sachs. And this is before Sachs was actually a regular at the Vatican. Sachs was gaining a lot of traction at that time in social justice circles in the church. He was working with diocesan directors. He was working with various bishops. Bishop McElroy was working with him. Father Brian Hare out in Boston, Bishop O'Malley's right hand for a while. He was working with Jeffrey Sachs. They were all promoting Jeffrey Sachs. So I was doing this report on Jeffrey Sachs. Why is this a problem? What is wrong with Jeffrey Sachs? And I was talking about his book, The End of Poverty. And in his book, he heavily promoted population control. Said we've got to get fertility rates going. We've got to get them down. We've got to promote contraception, promote condom use, that kind of thing. That was the thesis of his book. It was all about population control. And what I found was that the executive director of Catholic Relief Services at that time, a man by the name of Ken Hackett, had given a glowing review of The End of Poverty by Jeffrey Sachs. He called it a boon for the cause of development. And so I included that little tidbit in my report. And when I did, the next thing when that report went public, the next thing I know, Ken Hackett sends a fax to all of the board members of American Life League talking about how Michael Hitchborn is attacking us and he's attacking Christ's poor and he's making it difficult for us, and just flipped out. Now, here's the thing. Whenever somebody's guilty, they overreach in their reaction almost every time. Whether it's not to react at all, so they suppress everything as much as they can to be as stoic as possible, or they blow up and they make a big to-do about it. Well, he made a big to-do about it. And so what that did is tell me that I found a problem. I struck a nerve. It's time to dig deeper. Well, over the course of time, my work with American Life League came to an end, and I launched the Lepanto Institute. And having launched the Lepanto Institute, that was in the beginning of 2015, my very first major report was on Catholic Relief Services. I did another report on them. This report was called, what was the headline that I used? It was, here's the report. The headline was CRS and My Changing Body. Now, the problem that I discovered is that Catholic Relief Services had implemented a Planned Parenthood-style sex education program in Rwanda, and the program was called My Changing Body. It was funded by USAID. It was developed by Georgetown University's Institute of Reproductive Health, also a grant recipient from CRS. And according to a 2013 brief by the Georgetown University Institute for Reproductive Health, Catholic Relief Services and Caritas Rwanda, there are big problems with Caritas also, were implementing partners for My Changing Body. Now, here's the problem. And if you look at our full report, you'll see My Changing Body has all kinds of just horrible, disgusting things in it, attacking chastity, attacking morality, and it's got extremely graphic information. It encourages contraception use. It talks about the different kinds of family planning methods that people could use: male condoms, female condoms, intrauterine devices, diaphragm, oral contraceptives. All of those are listed. You've got to understand, this program was designed for kids between the ages of 10 and 14. 10 and 14. And they're giving them intimate details on human sexuality, how these devices work, and they even promoted masturbation throughout the entire curriculum. In fact, the word masturbation is used in a positive way 48 times in the document. Okay, this curriculum, let me see, I think it was 100 pages long, or a little over 100 pages long. But yeah, it promoted masturbation. So I started doing a little bit more digging, and I found that not only had Georgetown University said that CRS implemented My Changing Body, and they identified specifically this curriculum, gave a picture of the front of the curriculum itself. Then, in a report by USAID, this was produced in 2011, in this report on that particular program, My Changing Body, it said in the acknowledgments section, "We would like to thank the staff and workers at APROFAM," which is Planned Parenthood, "and CRS for their enthusiasm and hard work revising and testing My Changing Body curriculum." Then, in the executive summary, where it identified that the curriculum is for kids aged 10 to 14, It said the curriculum was integrated into ongoing life skills programs in youth serving organizations, was implemented in Rwanda by Catholic Relief Services and its partner Caritas. So it's important to know or to make note of the fact that this program was implemented by CRS and Caritas in Rwanda. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind, because as we will continue to investigate this, you'll see that the specificity of what happened in Rwanda is key to understanding how bad this is. Um, in another document, or actually in the same document, page 12, the USAID report, it said that the Institute for Reproductive Health from Georgetown University, with Catholic Relief Services and its partner Caritas, to integrate the My Changing Body sessions into the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR. And they also used My Changing Body the pilot for very young adolescents and their parents in collaboration with CRS Caritas in the rural area of Nyundo Diocese. Also, it said, although working with Catholic implementing partners, recruitment of very young adults and parents was done outside church settings. So this is also very interesting, because it says that they were working in collaboration in a particular diocese, but that they were working on implementing it and recruiting people for this particular program outside of church settings. And you have to start scratching your head and go, why would that be? Why would they start collecting people for this program, recruiting them for this program, and integrating it outside of church settings? It's a very interesting statement. Page 12 of USAID's report says, local Caritas coordinators worked with primary school teachers to identify youth from 5th and 6th grades and invite their parents to meet the program facilitators to learn about My Changing Body and participate in the evaluation. CRS staff, guided by the evaluator, identified and invited 105 very young adults for participation in the experimental group and 30 very young adults for participation in the control group. So what's very interesting about this is that later on page 16, in this same document, there's all the same USAID study of CRS's implementation of this program. It says this: the My Changing Body curriculum sought to encourage positive attitudes towards sexuality among very young adults. The data present in Table 5 suggests that My Changing Body had mixed success in promoting acceptance of masturbation as healthy sexual expression during adolescence. And it even gives the statistical numbers. But what is clear here is Table 5 says percentage change in attitudes related to sexuality in experimental group in Rwanda. So this is key. The USAID document says very clearly that My Changing Body was implemented by Catholic Relief Services in Rwanda. And they talked about the change in attitude toward masturbation in Rwanda. So they were testing that particular element of the program. So this is very clear, cut and dried proof that CRS absolutely promoted the full program in Rwanda. After we published our report, CRS then published their own response. And they started the response by saying CRS did not collaborate with Planned Parenthood. Well, that's a strange thing to say, since nobody accused them of collaborating with Planned Parenthood. So I don't know why they would say that. But then they go on to say CRS did not promote or normalize masturbation for teenagers. So now you have a problem. You guys implemented this program in its fullness, in an experiment group in Rwanda where they were tested for attitude changes regarding masturbation, and yet you're saying that they didn't promote or normalize masturbation for teenagers. So something is off. And I think that it's probably your response, not what was originally reported about what you did, especially since they gave a test number. They gave a numeric value to the change in attitude, which means they talked about it. They had to have talked about it. What's more, we actually got a hold of the test questions. And the test questions, number 13, true or false? Is it common for boys or girls to touch themselves in their genitals, masturbate in order to feel good? And then they give a little story about masturbation, and it's gross. It's gross. There are two questions related to this story, and one of the questions is touching his genitals often bad for John? In other words, the boy that they were talking about. So these are the test questions that were used in that experimental group in Rwanda. We know this for a fact. And CRS says, "Oh, but we didn't promote anything." Really? Let's also get to the fact that this is for 10-year-olds. 10-year-olds. And then it says the CRS in their response said CRS did not promote or encourage the use of condoms or other forms of birth control. The curriculum says otherwise. And then it goes on with attitudes toward homosexuality and that kind of thing. And all of this was in the curriculum. Okay. Now, what's also interesting is that in CRS's response, they said, quote, "We confirm that in 2009 and 2010, our parish priests and diocesan facilitators worked in close collaboration with CRS in Georgetown to adapt My Changing Body materials to ensure that all activities were consistent with Catholic teaching and appropriate to the Rwandan context." Here's the problem with that. Number one, it's evident that you didn't change anything. That's already clear. Number two, the purpose of CRS implementing the pilot version of this program was to test the program. CRS, following its testing, gave a glowing review. They said it worked. This is a great program. They gave it their seal of approval without any qualification. There wasn't any indication that, well, we can only give it tacit approval. We can only say that this is acceptable insofar as these aspects, but all the portions that mention contraception or masturbation or anything like that, those have to go. CRS didn't do anything of the sort. They gave a glowing review of it after it was implemented. So even if they changed it, which the evidence shows that they didn't, even if they changed it, they still promoted it after the fact with full knowledge of what was in the program. So they're either guilty of fully implementing the program and then lying afterward about what was in it, or they're guilty of fixing the program, implementing the stripped down version, and then promoting the whole thing without qualification. One way or the other, CRS is guilty of being involved in something it never should have had any involvement with to begin with. So that was the very first report that I went into with CRS. The next report, the next major report, came out in March of 2015. Now, this was the result of a full year investigation, and I actually worked hand in hand with Population Research Institute, Steve Mosier's organization. We worked together to conduct this investigation. What I initially found were documents from the US government, and these documents came from USAID, and they came from PEPFAR. They were project reports, and the project reports would give a summary of what the project is, what they're working on, what's included in it, and how it all comes together. And in these project reports, PEPFAR indicated very clearly that CRS was implementing a program called Healthy Choices 2, and that the program itself was promoting condom use. So the government document clearly stated CRS is implementing this program, and this program promotes condoms. That was very clear from the outset. What's more, so I'll read you the quote. It says, CRS and its partners will serve youth aged 10 to 14 with 2 EBIs. EBI means evidence-based, or I'm sorry, evidence-informed behavioral interventions. So 2 EBIs, Healthy Choices 1 and Families Matter program. Older adolescents aged 15 to 19 will receive Healthy Choices 2. And then in this same document, it says Healthy Choices 2 provides older adolescents with knowledge, confidence, and skills necessary to reduce their risk of STDs, HIV, and pregnancy by abstaining from sex or using other risk reduction strategies. I went to the Caritas Nieri website because that was the diocese in which this program was being implemented. Caritas Nieri said on its website that Catholic Relief Services was implementing this thing called the Sadia Project. And in the Sadia Project, they were implementing Healthy Choices 2. And then toward the bottom of that page, under Healthy Choices 2, it says that CRS is focusing on pregnancy prevention and condom use. So even Caritas Nieri was admitting that, yes, we were implementing Healthy Choices 2, and Healthy Choices 2 focuses on condom use. So that was clear. Another one of CRS's project partners, a group called Africa Inland Church Kenya. And in their document, okay, where they were talking about the implementation of the Sadia Project, in that document, it said it was listing its current programs, and it listed and identified Catholic Relief Services for Families Matter program and Healthy Choices. And then under the abstract or the ABCT and TB CRS PEPFAR project, it identified Healthy Choices. And under Healthy Choices, it said this: Healthy Choices 1 is taught in school to adolescents aged 10 to 13, while Healthy Choices 2 is taught out of school to adolescents aged 14 to 17. The curricula has 8 modules taught in a span of 4 weeks for Healthy Choices 1 and 2, or 2 weeks for Healthy Choices 2. So again, it was very clear that CRS was implementing Healthy Choices 2. In another document, let me see if I can pull this up so I can take a look at it. Here we go. The Africa Brotherhood Church, which was another one of CRS's implementing partners for this program, it said under a program called Abstinence and Be Faithful, Catholic Relief Services, who have continued to partner with ABC, the Africa Brotherhood Church, to date. In 2011, another program called Healthy Choices was added in the AB program, targeting youth between 13 and 17 years. 13 and 17. So Healthy Choices goes from 13 to 17 for Healthy Choices 2. It then went on to say, to ensure the integrity of the program, we monitor and evaluate the progress of the program and prepare monthly, quarterly, and annual reports to CRS Sadia for financial and for the financial narrative. And then underneath, it says that they were implementing Healthy Choices and Healthy Choices 2 through the Sadia project. So all of this is to confirm, yes, CRS was absolutely implementing the Healthy Choices program. So what we did, in working with Steve Mosier. I got him to, or he actually offered to send an investigator on the ground into Kenya, into the Nyeri district. And the investigator went around and interviewed people who were part of the implementation of the Sadia project. And he asked them for curriculum materials. He asked them what was discussed and how the program was being implemented. And over and over and over, he got absolute confirmation that yes, CRS was implementing healthy choices too, and that it was promoting condom use. He even sent me a photocopy of the facilitator's manual that they were using in Kenya, and it had all of the same stuff that I had found in the online documentation because I got a hold of the facilitator's manual, the full thing. I also got a hold of the student manual, and I went through it, and absolutely the whole thing was promoting condoms and contraception, all forms. And he got on the ground absolute confirmation, not just from the materials that he was able to grab, but he even interviewed some students who had been through the program itself. And in these interviews, let me see if I can find the interview here. Interview. Here we go. Yeah. So, before I get into that, the investigator went to CRS Kenya. He went to the CRS Kenya office, and he interviewed the secretary named Esther. And what he reported was, Esther told me that the project I was interested in were under the Sadia umbrella. However, she could only remember Healthy Choices 1 and 2. So, yes, Healthy Choices 1 and 2 was definitely being implemented. The secretary at CRS in that particular office said they were implementing Healthy Choices 1 and 2. And then he went to this high school and he interviewed two 16-year-old students who had been through the program. In the first interview, a boy named Emmanuel told the investigator that he learned about avoiding disease through either the use of abstinence or contraception. More specifically, he recalled learning about both condoms and Femiplan pills. The second interview, a girl named Faria, confirmed also learning about contraception through the Healthy Choices 2 program. She recalled being taught that they can use contraceptives to avoid pregnancy and STDs because they were healthy choices. Okay, that was actually the call for the Healthy Choices program. They are training kids how to make healthy choices. That's why it was called Healthy Choices. So they were echoing what they learned in the program. He didn't prompt them. He didn't ask them, "Are you being taught about contraception?" He would ask them things like, "What are you being taught? How is it being taught? What, and if they mentioned family planning, well, what about family planning? How was it implemented?" So I know the questions he was asking. So CRS was caught red-handed. Red-handed. I mean, we're talking murder blood all over their hands, knife in their hand, their DNA all over the murder victim. They were caught red-handed. Here's where it gets interesting. So in November of 2014, just as I was making the transition from American Life League to the Lepanto Institute, I went to the USCCB meeting, and I happened to run into Joan Rosenauer, who was a vice president at CRS. I'd met with her before. I met with Carolyn Wu, and I met with several other brass over at CRS. And I said, "I sent a whole bunch of documentation to CRS, but I never got a response. I was wondering if you had any information for me." And she said, "Oh, you should have received a letter. It was all a misunderstanding. CRS didn't do any of the things that you thought they were doing, but they didn't know we'd sent an investigator on the ground." That's where they tripped up. So after that meeting, I got a letter. Now, Archbishop Coakley of the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City was the chairman of the board of Catholic Relief Services at that time. In that letter, and I'll read to you this. It comes from Diane Clay. It's the Office of Communications out of the Archdiocese of Oklahoma. It says, "Dear Mr. Hitchborn and Mr. Mosier, thank you for your recent letter regarding your investigation of CRS's PEPFAR grants for the Sadia project in Kenya. Your research and information has been shared with Archbishop Coakley. As board chairman of CRS, the Archbishop takes the issue very seriously and is confident that it has been resolved. In Kenya, the operational plan report fiscal year 2012, so this was the initial report, the PEPFAR document that I found that showed that CRS was implementing all of this stuff. PEPFAR suggests that CRS was involved in activities engaged in by some other PEPFAR partners, e.g. condom promotion, that are in violation of church teaching. This was not the case. So not only are they saying that the other PEPFAR partners were not engaging in the condom promotion, but that CRS had nothing to do with any of it, that the whole project didn't have anything to do with the promotion of condoms. It says, CRS met with PEPFAR in Nairobi a few months ago, and PEPFAR apologized for its error and has since corrected the report. And then it just goes on to say that the Archbishop is confident that CRS continues to adhere to blah, blah, blah. Well, so then I went back to the government report. And what I found was that every mention of Healthy Choices 2 was deleted from the document. It was deleted from the government document. So someone in the federal government was talking to somebody from Catholic Relief Services, and they colluded to cover up the fact that they absolutely implemented Healthy Choices 2. And Healthy Choices 2, beyond every single doubt, was indeed promoting all forms of contraception. Now, what do we glean from that? First of all, CRS lied. Absolutely bold-faced lied. They said this was all a misunderstanding, it didn't happen. Well, absolutely it happened, because I got somebody on the ground who investigated and talked to people who were part of the program, and they all confirmed, yes, we're implementing Healthy Choices 2, and yes, it does promote contraception and condoms. We have CRS's partners, including Caritas of Nairobi, saying, yes, we implemented Healthy Choices 2, and yes, it has to do with condom use. All of this was out in the open and on the public record, which means CRS directly lied. And then they got a government agency to collude with them in covering up that lie. That's really serious. Really serious. Now, before I get into the next part of the program, I want to remind everybody that if you enjoy this program, if you want to support the kind of research that we're doing at the Lepanto Institute, you can help us out for just $15 a month. That's 50 cents a day. Really, the price of a soda one day. So if you were to come to lepantoin.org/anchor-team, you can join the Lepanto Institute. Once again, it's $15 a month, and it's a big help to us in conducting this kind of research and conducting these kinds of investigations, so that we can make sure that you, faithful Catholics, know exactly what the church is doing in the name of the church and with your money. Of course, we recommend that you don't give any money to CRS at this point. However, please do take a look at these reports. Incidentally, I want to say this. If you go to lepantoin.org/CRS, and I'm putting it in the chat room here, if you go to that particular link, you can see all these reports yourself, and you can pour through all of them. You can read all of the documentation. Everything is screen captured. Everything is linked, so you can go to the original documents. Incidentally, if anything doesn't work, let me know. I've saved all the original documents in case they decide to delete them from the internet for some reason, which happens. So anyway, $15 a month, you can help us out, help us continue this research, and go to lepantoion.org/CRS, and you can see the kind of research that we do. Now, let's move on. After all of this, we held a press con. I went straight to Steve Mosher and I said, CRS stands for Catholic Relief Services. So it's just CRS or Catholic Relief Services. They don't operate under any other name. I went to Steve Mosher and I said, all right, I have this letter that says that, oh, they looked into it. They talked to PEPFAR and it was all a big misunderstanding. And then they scrubbed everything. I said, Steve, we got them on the ropes. We got them on the ropes. I said, now we need to hold a press conference. And we did. We held a press conference exposing all of this. And the morning of our press conference, the very morning after we had released, we published and we sent the 56-page report. That same morning, in the middle of our press conference, one of the reporters in the room raises his hand and says, CRS just released a statement regarding your report, and they say that it's all bogus. They said they thoroughly investigated our report. So here's what's interesting about that. CRS didn't have the full information. They had some of it. They had the stuff about what we had with the PEPFAR document. They didn't have any knowledge that there was an investigator on the ground until after the fact. So there's no way they could have thoroughly investigated, because it would have required them calling CRS operations over there in Kenya, getting in contact with people saying, okay, so an investigator was on the ground. He allegedly said this and this and this. You need to tell me exactly what happened. There's no way they did that. There wasn't enough time. So they came back with this statement, and what they claimed was this. The report alleges that CRS promoted condoms as part of our work with Healthy Choices, a PEPFAR HIV/AIDS prevention program in Kenya for children aged 10 to 14. The allegation is false. CRS took the original CDC and Prevention Healthy Choices 1 program and changed it to remove all aspects that violated church teaching. We then implemented this revised version into the program. We could do this because of PEPFAR's conscience clause, which allows us to change things to be more Catholic friendly, whatever. So they completely ignored the fact that we're talking about Healthy Choices 2, that yes, you implemented Healthy Choices 2. So then I'm trying to get to, okay. The report also alleges that CRS was involved in Healthy Choices 2, a similar program to version 1, which was produced by the CDC and the government of Kenya. Under the SADIA project, CRS's implementing partners used 2 out of the 4 sections. Though, now remember, I went to one of the implementing partners that said that there were 8 sections of the project. So they're saying that there were 4 sections for Healthy Choices 1, 4 sections for Healthy Choices 2. CRS is saying they only used 6, not 8. But the implementing partner said, oh no, we're using all 8, and they did it specifically under the auspices of CRS. They identified that they did it specifically under the auspices of CRS. So CRS is lying here. CRS's implementing partners used 2 out of the 4 sections, those 2 which were inappropriate, which were appropriate and in accordance with CRS and church doctrine, and did not use the other 2 sections as they were deemed inappropriate. And then it goes on to talk about a few other things. You can look at that full response, but what that did, of course, once again, when somebody comes out with just such a forceful and explosive report making wild claims that they can't possibly have investigated, and claim that they did. Because of that, I then started looking. We actually filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the federal government for all materials and documentation regarding the Sadia project. And what we found on top of that is not only did CRS implement Healthy Choices 2, all sections, and we have CRS's own paperwork with their own letterhead showing how many kids they introduced to Healthy Choices 2. But we also discovered that they implemented a program called Shuga, SHUGA. And we have CRS's own reporting metrics showing that they implemented the program and the number of kids that they exposed to it. The problem is that Shuga is a PEPFAR created, Bill and Melinda Gates collaborated program that was put together with MTV in order to promote condoms. That was its sole purpose. Its entire intention was to promote condoms. It was a TV program and it was near pornographic. I mean, it was disgusting. But I actually found the full program and I watched it all and I got all the sections where they're out there promoting condom use. CRS claimed, well, we didn't really implement Shuga. One of our implementing partners did, and we told them not to do that. That was bad. So here's another problem. I found a Catholic Relief Services grant application form. It was for a continuation grant. In other words, they'd already completed the project for the Sadia project. And CRS decided, well, we want to continue this project a little bit longer, which means we need a little bit more money from the government. So they outlined their whole plan in this continuation grant. And in the continuation grant application, what they said was, not only did we implement Shuga, but we're looking to actually implement Shuga Season 2. So they wanted to go on with the continuation of the program. That's another lie. CRS completely lied about their involvement with Shuga because that grant application was filled out and submitted by them, not by one of their partners, not by any other agency. CRS itself filed that grant application form. So that's a lie. That's another lie that they filed. So after that and all those investigations, all that information, that analysis, that all came out in 2015. I've then since conducted investigations into their personnel, and I actually exposed the fact that one of their senior executive vice presidents was in a same-sex marriage. I showed how many CRS and USCCB employees were promoting and celebrating same-sex marriage. I was showing how CRS senior advisors and HIV technical advisors were promoting abortion, pro-abortion candidates. Some of them had even donated to Emily's List, which is an organization that gives money to women running for office on the idea that they're running for office in order to keep abortion legal. We found an employee that worked for CRS promoting Planned Parenthood on her own Facebook page. CRS did not fire her, even after I talked to them about it directly. Didn't fire her. And we found a bunch of other stuff about their personnel. You can look into that on that research page too. I also have a section here, CRS lobbying on behalf of contraception providers. In that whole report, in all of those reports, what I have found is that year after year, CRS and the USCCB actually go up on Capitol Hill and they lobby Congress. And they're lobbying Congress because Congress is getting ready to set their budget. And they say, as you're looking at the appropriations bill and you're trying to consider what the budget's going to look like, this is what we would like for you to fund. And consistently, they are lobbying on behalf of PEPFAR, USAID, and the Global Fund to Combat HIV and AIDS. All three of which are heavily involved in the promotion of contraception, all forms. So CRS is lobbying Congress to maintain billions of dollars. That's with a B, billion with a B. Billions of dollars to these organizations that are distributing and promoting contraception in third world countries. And why are they doing it? Because USAID was created specifically as a population control organization. It's in their charter. It says that organizations that they help are to file a report, and that report is supposed to indicate certain markers, including a reduction in fertility rates. So if they want US government money, they have to prove that that country is reducing its own fertility rates. CRS lobbies for that organization to get money without qualification. This is unconscionable. So that's something else that we go into, and you can take a look at that in the reports list. But this brings me to 2016. Now, I had been digging for months on CRS at this point, and I was looking around trying to find the next project, something a little bit more recent. And I was having a very hard time finding something. And finally, I was starting to get distraught, going, I launched the Lepanto Institute in order to maintain kind of a watchdog look on organizations like CRS, and I can't find anything. So finally, my wife, she takes the kids to co-op, and I'm home alone. So I go on my knees and I'm pleading with Our Lady. And I prayed a full 15-decade rosary. And I said, Mother, I've been at this for 2 or 3 months and I can't find anything. I'm not finding any evidence right now that CRS was engaged in something untoward, but I know there's something there. I can see all the markers that indicate that there's a problem, but I'm not finding any direct evidence. I said, you know where the problems are. I'm not smart enough to figure this out. So if there's something that you want me to report, if there's something you want me to find, I need you to show me where it is. And if you do, then I will then dig into that and I will report it and make known what you want me to make known. Now, keep in mind, I'd been digging for 2 or 3 months, hadn't been able to find anything. I said, after I finished my rosary, I said, okay, I'm going to go back to work and I'm going to start with the last thing I was looking at. And the last thing I was looking at was a document that was in Swahili, which doesn't even use the alphabet that we have. And I couldn't figure out anything. I had no idea why CRS's name came up in this document, except that the image file that they created for the document had CRS, the letters CRS in it, and it was a searchable document. That was the only reason it came up. So I started doing an auto translate of the document. And of course, it comes back mostly gobbledygook, but I was getting an indication that there was something regarding family planning and birth control in this particular document. So CRS was somehow connected to this. I dug a little bit deeper. I found the name of the project. It was called Project Access, AXXES. And when I looked up Project Access, I found their project website very quickly, and they had all their quarterly reports. And when I looked at their quarterly reports, I found inventory reports. So all the project managers had their different inventory reports for this particular project. And I saw that CRS, in the inventory reports, it's a spreadsheet, received and distributed 2.25 million units of contraception, condoms, female condoms, IUDs, pills, shots, Depo-Provera, implants, even surgical sterilization kits. I poured through all of those reports, and you can look at the report that we put together on this. I poured through those reports, and everything pointed to CRS received and distributed all of this contraception and allowed it and participated in the promotion of contraception through the implementation of the whole program. I did the report. CRS's response to this report. Let me pull up their response. You'll find this very interesting. So the headline that I put for this one was CRS urges concerned Catholics to ignore damning evidence in reports. And in their response, CRS said the contraceptives in question were delivered to the geographic area where CRS worked, but it was IMA World Health, not CRS, who provided an alternative mechanism for the training, storage, and distribution of contraceptive products. So what they're saying is that, well, we didn't actually get our hands dirty with the contraception. We had somebody else take all that contraception and distribute it in our territory for us so that we can say, well, we didn't touch it. We didn't touch the hot potato. It's not in our hands. Somebody else touched it. By the way, if you like this report, please give me a thumbs up. Click like, subscribe, whatever it is. If you subscribe, click that little bell that says give me a notification whenever a new video comes up, so that way you'll know when we have a new video out. But please click like and subscribe. It really does boost our ratings and helps us to reach a broader audience. Furthermore, if you like this information, if you appreciate what we're doing at the Lepanto Institute and you want to see us continue to do this kind of work, please join the Anchor team for $15 a month. That's just 50 cents a day at lepantoin.org/anchor-team. Okay. So if you'd like to help keep us going, your donation, $15 a month, even if you can't participate every Friday night in these video chats, which is fine. We do have a good, lively group who, you ask anybody in the group who's a veteran, one of our members, they'll tell you how much they enjoy and how much they look forward to our Friday night get-togethers. But it's a great time. Everybody knows everybody else. You get to meet other like-minded faithful Catholics at the same time. But please join us, help us continue the work that we're doing through joining the Anchor team. All right, we have just a few minutes left, so I'm going to end with one more report, because this one, the response that I got from CRS in this regard was so ridiculous. It was completely and totally unbelievable, even to me. What we discovered, now at this time, I was actually meeting with CRS again. I'd met with their top brass. I met with Bishop Gregory Mansour, who was the chairman of the board at Catholic Relief Services at the time. And as we were in communication, he was looking at the material that I kept showing him, and he said, Michael, this is all old. This is all old stuff. We're not doing these projects anymore. If you really want to convince me of anything, you're going to have to show me something current. I said, okay. So I started looking through CRS's current projects, and we found a project called the Mikolo Project. And the Mikolo Project was being run in Madagascar. Well, that's interesting. Why am I getting a 404 error on my website now? For whatever reason, that link's not working. I don't know why. Okay, well, I can recite it from memory. The Mikolo Project was it was an interesting project. What they were doing were sending out these CHVs, which stands for Clinical Health Volunteers. And what the CHVs would do is go into the community and they would introduce them in various health matters. You know, they could help them to obtain medicine. They could help them to see a clinic or a clinician, or figure out where to go see the doctor. And as they were working, the thing that was coming up, and the problem that they were finding, is that these CHVs, the volunteers, didn't really want to be volunteers. If they were going to go do something like this, they wanted to be paid for it. So they found that they really needed to come up with a funding mechanism in order to keep these CHVs going. One of the things that they were focused on, the CHVs, was to spread contraception and encourage women to take and use contraceptives. So they went to CRS and they said, we need a funding mechanism. Can you help us come up with a microloan financing system that will keep this project funded so that it's self-sustaining, so that we don't have to keep pulling government grants in order to make it go?" So what they did is that they went to CRS. CRS implemented something called a SILC, a savings and loan lending community. And those lending communities, they would get the people of the village together and they would all pitch in a certain amount of money and say, okay, we now have a pot. And from this pot of money, we're going to pay a clinical health volunteer to go around the community, and he's going to be the one who uh, shows us all the different medicines and spreads contraception and whatnot. And everybody else, if they want to take out a loan, then they can take that and they can start a business. And then once they make money from the business, they can pay back the loan with interest. And then that interest goes back to the people that put the money into the pot. So they make a little bit of money based on the whole communal loaning thing. CRS knew that the project was directed at spreading contraception. They wanted absolutely to spread contraception. So why would they agree to implement a savings and loan community based on a model that they created for a project that was directed at spreading contraception? It made no sense. And then what we discovered is that CRS created its own videos explaining the project so that they could share this video with their supporters and say, look at the good work we're doing. They left out the contraception part verbally. Okay, they left that out. But what they had in their video, and by the way, the end of the video had CRS, it had CRS's logo, it had all of their credits. This was translated by so-and-so. It was scripted by so-and-so. It was narrated by so-and-so. It was reviewed by these people in CRS headquarters. It was also reviewed by these CRS personnel on location. So it was full of CRS's credit. The video itself was full of CRS's credits. And at the very end, it said copyright Catholic Relief Services. So in the middle of the program, as CRS in this video is explaining how the savings and loan community works and how the CHV would go around the village, they had what's called B-roll. Now, B-roll is footage. It's like you're in the village and you're just kind of taking camera shots of people walking around, of people congregating, of people doing something in the community as you are narrating to kind of give a feel for what's happening. That's called B-roll. So CRS had its own B-roll in the middle of its explanation of a clinical health volunteer taking money from their savings and loan community and going around and meeting women in their various huts. And in this B-roll, the guy pulls out a box out of a backpack. And then he sets it on a table, and you see this woman he's talking to, and she's got her arm extended, like he's about to give her a shot. I zoomed in on the box, and the box was something called Confiance. Confiance is the Pfizer Corporation's version of Depo-Provera. It's injectable contraception. So that CHV pulls out a box of injectable contraception in the middle of a CRS video with CRS copyrights, with CRS credits at the end, naming all the people that were involved in the promotion of this or production of this video. And I took this information and I sat down and I explained it all to Bishop Mansour. And he said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. For weeks, I kept asking, Your Excellency, when am I going to hear something? When am I going to hear something? When is CRS going to explain this? He finally gets back to me and he tells me that CRS told him, oh, that's not our video. Really? That's not your video. Oh no, somebody produced that video. USAID produced that video, and the video company on the ground mistakenly put our credits at the end. Really? So if we're to go back in time now, what I'm seeing is this: the my the My Changing Body program. Oh, we were mistakenly identified with implementing the full thing. Georgetown Reproductive Health Institute didn't know what they were talking about when they said that we were promoting masturbation. USAID didn't know what they were talking about when they were promoting masturbation. Going to Sadia. Oh, PEPFAR mistakenly identified that we were implementing healthy choices too. We didn't. Um, our own documentation mistakenly said that we were promoting sugar. We didn't. um, Going to Project Access. Oh, it looked like we were actually distributing all of this contraception, but we didn't. Somebody else did, but we didn't. And now you're saying this video with your credits, with your narrator. By the way, it's the same narrator that does all the other narrations for CRS's videos. They have another narrator that does the USAID videos, not the same person. So CRS has its own narrator, its own credits, its own copyright on a video where they show a woman getting a shot of Depo-Provera or Confiance, injectable contraception, while it's describing its savings and loan communities. And now you're telling me this isn't your video. How many times is CRS going to have to lie in order to maintain its Catholic identity? And at what point is some good, intrepid bishop going to stand up and say, enough, enough? You can lie only so much. Plausibility or plausible deniability has gone out the window and flown to Madagascar. You have no credibility anymore. CRS lies and it lies and it lies. And it's going to continue on lying because it needs the Catholic identity to be able to go into the pews and get you, the people, to contribute to their Rice Bowl campaigns, to maintain the fact that their CEOs are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, including their president, the head of CRS, guy named Sean Callahan, making $500,000 a year at CRS to help the poor. It's disgusting. It's absolutely vile. And they lie about what they're doing. They lie about everything. It's time for it to end. It's time to put it all to bed. The last set of reports that I was going to tell you about tonight, but we've run out of time, has to do with the programs that we reported on in 2020. And most people missed all of that information because at the time that we were releasing our reports, the whole country was shutting down because of COVID. It was in March of 2020. So nobody was paying attention to what I had reported. They were paying attention to the fact that you can't go to mass anymore because bishops are closing the doors. You can't you can't go outside. You can't go to a restaurant. You can't drive to the grocery store. You can't do anything. You have to stay home. So our reports got missed. But if you want to see them, you can go to the website. They're the last 6 reports on the page filed under OVC projects in Africa. And what we prove in those reports is that CRS produced its own documents that promote condom use. We found these on CRS's website. We found these with CRS's letterhead. We found these with CRS's copyright on them. And of course, their response was, oh, a third party made those and put our logo on it and uploaded it to our website. Yeah, same excuse, same lie, same lie. So I also found that CRS was in charge of a website It was a warehouse, a resource library. And in that resource library were hundreds of documents promoting contraception and condoms and abortion and everything else. CRS said, oh no, we scrubbed all that material. It's not there. Oh no, it's there. It's still there. You just made it unsearchable to make it look like you took it down. You didn't take anything down. It's all there. The other thing that we found is that CRS created 2 health referral networks, one in Cameroon and one in Nigeria. Those health referral networks include organizations that are promoting abortion and contraception to young women. And CRS is sending young women to those organizations specifically for sexual and reproductive health services. Are you going to tell me that, well, they're going over there to get prenatal checkups? Sure. When one of the organizations said specifically that they are receiving women at CRS's recommendation for condoms because they're female sex workers, come on. Come on. Of course, CRS didn't respond to any of this, and they're not going to because they know how badly they've been caught. We also found that CRS implemented a program called DREAMS. It was produced by PEPFAR. The DREAMS project specifically and unequivocally says this whole project is all about promoting contraception. We're going to promote contraception to young women. That's one of its primary goals. CRS was the lead implementing organizer for the DREAMS project. And even though it sequestered a little corner, said, oh no, we're doing all the good, happy stuff. We're not doing anything with condoms and contraception. The fact of the matter is the promotion of condoms and contraception was an integral part of the whole project and had to be done by somebody else, one of CRS's sub-partners. So CRS implementing a program directed at promoting condoms and contraception, even though they don't get their hands dirty, they're responsible for implementing the project and allowing somebody else to do this. That's like saying you're a principal of a school, but well, gosh, I'm not distributing drugs. It's those drug dealers in the school playground that I let over there. They're the ones who are distributing drugs, but I'm not doing it. That's exactly what CRS is doing. So anyway, all of this is on the website. You can go to the website. I've given you the link. I'll give it to you one more time. Let's get that up there. It's lepantoin.org/CRS. And if you'd like to join the anchor team, $15 a month. Please, if you like this report, if you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up, click like, click subscribe. If you click subscribe, be sure to click that little bell that says, hey, I want to make sure that I get notified whenever a new video comes out. But if you'd like, most importantly, your support really does help us. It helps us to continue these investigations and to help me bring the material to you in a way that is easily digestible. So you can do that by going to lepantoin.org/anchor-team. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say that we will close with our closing prayer and that I will see you all next week. So, in nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right, everybody. God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend. And all you new members, I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Please join. God bless you. Have a good night.